Hi, welcome to John's Tech and Travel. So you want to hike Camino de Santiago. Today, I'll give you a timeline that might help you with some important decisions you have to make. This isn't going to be a video about packing lists. This is going to be a timeline, kind of a checklist for how to prepare to leave for Camino de Santiago. Some of the things we'll discuss are, should you do it? What should you take with you? How should you prepare? And much, much more. Now, I have a lot of respect for impulse traveling, but as you get a little bit older, you might find that you need more time to plan and that planning can work to your advantage. So let's start with 1 year out. What kind of things do you have to think about 1 year before you leave for Camino de Santiago? Well, first of all, are you going to do it? I guess that's a good basic place to start. Are you really going to do this? Because you have some things that you're going to need to consider. For example, if you own a home or have an apartment, who's going to watch the place while you're gone? Who's going to make sure there aren't any leaks? Who's going to make sure the heat is on in the winter? Who's going to take care of your pets and your plants? Remember, you're going to be gone for at least 4, maybe 5, 6 weeks. But who's going to take care of things while you're gone? You might have bills that have to be paid while you're gone. Is there somebody who's going to be able to do that for you? Somebody you trust, somebody who's responsible, somebody who's familiar with your finances. If you have a spouse or a loved one who usually takes care of those things and is going to be there while you're gone, that's all taken care of. If not, you have to start now to figure out how you're going to handle that issue. Next, when? When are you going to go? There's a difference between hiking in the spring or the fall, and there's a big difference from those two seasons to the summer. There's even a bigger difference when you get to the winter, but some people do hike through the winter. So you're going to have to make sure that you're willing to prepare for those various situations. Next, we're 1 year out now. Which route are you going to take? There are at least 7 main routes. Everybody's familiar, it seems, with Francés and Portuguese. There's also Del Norte, Primitivo, Via de la Plata, Inglés, and then there's Finisterre Mucha. So which one of those are you going to do? And while there are only 7 main routes, there are hundreds of variations. For example, you can do Camino Francés starting in Le Puy, France. That would be 1,000 miles. Or you can start in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, where more people start. That's about 500 miles. Soria is much closer and gives you the minimum amount of distance needed to get your Compostela. But you can also start at any other town along the way on the Francés or on any one of those other routes. For example, many people start in Porto, Portugal. It's a beautiful walk along the coast or inland route. Again, there are several different decisions you can make just walking up from Porto. Next, who's going to go with you? Are you going to go with a large group? A lot of people do. A lot of people need that support, and so they do that. A lot of college students go in groups. There are some great tour guides who I see on social media who lead groups every year, and I'm all for that. I think that's a great thing to do. And if you do need a lot of support, do that. However, if you're more independent, some people travel in 2s or 3s, but then there are some people who start alone and they make friends for a lifetime. All of those are great ways to go. Hi, fellow pilgrims. I want to interrupt this video just for a second to ask a favor of you. If you're finding this video to be helpful to you in any way, please hit the like button. Also subscribe to the channel. And if you ring the bell, you'll get notifications of when I have videos coming out. And soon I'll be doing a Camino, and you don't want to miss any of those. Buen Camino. Now that we've considered where we're going to start our Camino and when we're going to do that, at about 9 months out, we want to be looking at how we're going to get to where we're going to start. Most people coming from a long distance, whether it's the United States or somewhere else in the world, are going to leapfrog to a major city. Catch a flight to Madrid or Paris or Lisbon. There are a lot of possibilities, but now at 9 months out is a good time to start looking at connections. How we can get to that major city, and then how we can get from that major city to the town where we're going to start. Is there a car service that you can hire to take you? Car services tend to be a little more expensive, but if you can team up with a few other people and share the costs, that works really well. Just do that. I find that trains are a good, efficient way to go, and so that's typically what I like to do. Next, are there places to stay at my arrival town and in towns along the way to my start of the Camino? Here's where Booking.com can be helpful, or Airbnb. There are also good guidebooks that you can use. Are there places to eat in the towns that I'm going to be at? You can usually find something. Even if you can't find something, you can stop in at a market and find a can of tuna or sardines and some crackers. I know that doesn't sound appealing, but it's something that I would do. Finding those restaurants ahead of time can be especially helpful if you have dietary needs. If you're diabetic, if you need gluten-free meals, if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, you might want to look at restaurants ahead of time and find out what the best options will be for you in specific towns, so that you aren't disappointed or so that you don't get into a problem situation. At 6 months before you leave, you want to start looking at a couple of very important things. One is budget, and the other is the structure of your trip. It's time to buy your airline tickets. I know it seems like that's early, but if you're really committed to this, 6 months out is not too early to start looking at airline tickets. I'm a big fan of not checking bags, especially if I'm carrying a backpack. And by the way, when I travel, whether I'm going to be hiking or not, I always have my backpack with me. That's the only big bag that I have, and then I have a small carry-on also. I find that's a very economical way to travel, especially since in recent years, checking baggage has become very expensive. If you book an economy flight, you're going to find out that it will not allow you to bring a carry-on bag to put in the overhead compartment. All you're going to be allowed to do is bring in a small bag that will go under the seat in front of you. So you have to pay for an upgrade, but that's usually still less expensive than checking a bag. Doesn't make any sense, but that's how it is. And also with many airlines, when you do that upgrade, you also get the ability to choose your seat, although that may cost extra also. Every airline is a little bit different. Let's take a look at an example where I want to fly from Paris to Biarritz. I find that that's going to cost me $62.98. That's the basic fee. That doesn't include the ability to change date or time or to change the booking at all. That would cost extra, but the basic cost here is $62.98. Now, if you want to select your seat, it's going to cost at least $22.99. And of course, the better seat you want, the more you're going to have to pay. It also does not include a checked-in bag, but you can find out what that costs in a drop-down box. And when I click on that drop-down box, I find out that one bag, this is the cheapest option, up to 15 kilograms, is going to cost $58.37. That's just a few bucks less than what it would cost for another ticket. So that isn't great. Let's see what it would cost to have a carry-on. Well, a carry-on bag up to 15 kilograms is $30.81. Now, that's still half the price of what I'm paying for the ticket, almost, but that seems to be my best option. In another example, on that same day, a little more expensive flight, second flight, this is flying a different airline. The first one was easyJet, this one is Transavia, hope I'm pronouncing that right, and the basic cost is $99.77, but that includes, it says right here, carry-on bag included. However, that does not include seat selection. Again, from $22.99, so it's going to cost you even more. So the best option is probably the easyJet option, and to take my backpack along, I'm going to have to pay that extra 30 bucks. Also at 6 months, we want to start looking for places to stay at our initial destination in Europe. And that might seem a little early, but if you book through a company like Booking.com, you'll find out that you can probably do that without putting any money down. And you have the right to cancel. Make sure you have that right to cancel. Now, check listing. Each listing is different, so make sure you do have that ability. If you're flying into Madrid or Porto or Paris, you might want to spend 2 or 3 days there. If you're coming from a time zone that is 6 hours different, that's quite a shock to the system, so you might want to plan on spending 2 or 3 days in the major city that you fly into. Of course, if you're going to hike the Portuguese and you're staying in Porto, all the better. You don't have to plan to go to another town before you start. But just remember that if you change your mind about where you want to stay, you can change or cancel the reservation for free if you have booked it properly. Next, pick out the shoes that you're going to be wearing and look for bargains. A lot of people these days are wearing Lone Peak shoes from Altra. They update those every year. And so, does it really matter if they just came out with 7s and 6s are on sale? Do you really think they're that much better? If 6s are cheaper, go with the 6s. And if you can, buy 2 pair. I'll explain later what we're going to do with 2 pair instead of just 1 pair. People also wear Cascadias by Brooks, great shoes. A lot of people still wear hiking boots. I'm more on the side of lighter shoes, and so I wear the Lone Peaks from Altra. I've been wearing them for years. I really like them. And like I said, I like to buy them cheap when I can, so last year's models work well for me. Like I said, when you decide on the shoes you're going to be wearing, buy 2 pairs. The first pair will be for training, and the second pair will be for when you're actually on the Camino. Consider starting to take longer and more frequent walks, wearing one of those pairs of shoes now. Get your body used to moving. If you're a fairly sedentary person, you might find that it's an advantage to get out and get moving and walking several miles a day. Use your health or fitness app on your phone to track that. Samsung has it, Apple has it, and so it shouldn't be an issue. You should be able to use that. And by the way, on walks with different people at different times, we've actually compared the number of steps and the number of miles that we've gone. And we find that between Apple and Samsung, they're really, really close. One doesn't seem to be much more accurate than the other. Finances. At 6 months out, we need to do some consideration for finances. You want to take a look at a Schwab debit card. I've been using the Schwab debit card for many years. Don't put this off. Apply for one now. It doesn't cost you anything to apply for. Go to the Schwab website or call them if you wish. The card is free with the creation of an account. And here's how it works. You call Schwab, you create the account. You transfer a sum of money, and they send you a debit card. The benefits of the Schwab card are they work at any ATM machine worldwide. There's no fee, there's no minimum balance. There's no fee to use it. If a bank does charge you a fee, Schwab will reimburse that fee, and it will show up on your statement as a reimbursement. Very importantly, with the Schwab card, there are no exchange fees. What's nice about that, now you don't have to get your money from an exchange at the airport when you arrive, or go to a storefront exchange that's going to charge you a high exchange fee. Schwab guarantees that the money exchange rate for that day, for that hour, is what you're going to get with no extra fees. When you withdraw money anywhere in the world in a local currency, you get the current exchange rate. No fees are added. At 3 months out, let's consider our gear. If you don't have a pack that you're going to use, then you need to go shopping. You probably want a pack that's going to be somewhere in the range of 34 to 46 liters capacity. Smaller packs and you're in the range of a day pack. It might not be quite big enough for you. Larger and you're carrying extra weight for a larger pack. By that I mean if you buy a 60-liter pack, now you've got extra capacity that you're not going to use, but the pack is that much larger. You're going to be carrying that much extra weight with you. Hiking is a sport where every ounce counts. Or if you like it in metric, hiking is a sport where every 28.35 grams counts. If you buy a pack that's too big, that's also encouraging you to put more in it, and that's more weight that you have to carry. Here's another consideration: electronics. So at 3 months out, we want to consider what we're going to be carrying with us as far as technology goes. Some say not to use phones and other electronics, but it's your Camino. On social media, there's a lot of sniping that takes place about those people who use earbuds, those people who are always looking at their phone. But once you're on the trail, that just doesn't matter. We're not hiding behind our screens and our keyboards anymore, and you're free to travel the way that you want to travel. If you want to walk by yourself and listen to your music or a podcast or an audio book, that's what you should do. It's your Camino. You walk the way you want to walk the walk. If you are taking a phone, now's a good time to start checking with European companies that sell SIM cards or eSIMs. SIM cards, of course, are the physical small card that plug into your phone and give it its identification. Typically, they are regional and work with regional carriers. I'm in the United States, and so the SIM card in my phone works only in the United States. If I travel overseas, I'm going to pay a lot more money to use it there. And so it makes sense to buy a SIM that works in the countries that I'm going to. For example, if you're hiking the Française, you're going to be in both France and Spain, and so you want to make sure you get a SIM card that is going to work in those two countries. I'm not going to make recommendations on which company you should buy from, but if you go online, you can find reviews for different companies, and that's a good way to spend your time. Do a little bit of research. I like to use eSIMs. My phone can handle an eSIM, and so that's not a physical card. The eSIM just allows me to contract a SIM through a company, download it to my phone, then it's ready to go. When I arrive, I use it for the first time, and my time starts with that eSIM. There's some that you can buy now that are unlimited data. I don't know how good the bandwidth is on those, but that's a good thing to consider. It's a lot easier to use an eSIM than it is to use a physical SIM card. Another option that a lot of people still like to use is the old burner phone. Just buy a cheap phone when you get there, and then you have one to use. But if you're used to using your own phone with your own apps, and people know how to contact you on that phone, then you probably want to start with that phone. Earbuds. That relates to the phone. Some on social media will criticize others for listening to music while they walk, but once you're on the Camino, like I said, that problem is cured, and I recommend that you have a good set of earbuds just in case you do want to listen to something late at night, some comforting music, some sounds of crickets in the outdoors, whatever it is that you want to do. Personally, I like the Apple AirPod Pro 2. And once you get past that name, they're really great at noise blocking. And I find that they work even with my Android phone. Really like those things. How about a laptop or tablet? I don't carry either of those, but a lot of people do. And so now you want to be looking for something that's really lightweight that you can take with you if you don't already have something. Some people need to answer emails. Some people like to use them for writing while they're traveling, for their journaling. Either way, if that's what you want to do, then that's a little bit of extra weight that you have to carry, but I recommend that you find something that is as light as possible. A camera, and I'm not talking about the one on your phone. How about a separate camera? If you are involved in social media, maybe you want to grab another kind of camera, a GoPro or a more professional vlogging camera. You see people carrying them. Just try to find something that's as light as possible. Do you need a battery bank? I've read a lot of accounts where people say they just dumped them once they got there. After a week or two carrying the thing around, they realize they just don't need it. I do carry a battery bank with me, and I find it to be very valuable. I can charge things as I'm walking. Charge the battery bank at night, and then repeat that same procedure. That way, the thing that I'm leaving charging when I go out to dinner and charging through the night is the battery bank. And then during the day when I'm traveling, I might be charging other things in my pack from that battery bank. So it works for me, might not be necessary for you. A headlamp or a flashlight. Do you really need one? From the accounts that I read, most people say that they never use them. However, I do carry one with me. I recommend that you carry one that is an LED model. All of them are now. I recommend that you carry one that's rechargeable. To me, it doesn't make sense to have to put batteries in, but on the other hand, LED models use very little power, and so the batteries last a long time. So 50-50 kind of thing there. Just remember, if you are buying one, make sure you get one with red light mode, so that if you do need to get up in the middle of the night, you can switch it on to red light mode and it won't be as disturbing to other people who are sleeping near you. Now is also the time to prepare for flight. If you have a long flight, you might have certain needs that don't mesh well with Camino travel. I mean, you have to think about it this way. It's two totally different things. I'm going to be flying and I have certain needs, and I'm going to be walking and those are other needs. And so big bulky travel pillows that you put around the neck, they work well for flying, but who wants to carry one of those with them through the entire Camino? There are some smaller inflatable models that compress into a very tiny package when you're ready to start walking your Camino. Large over-the-ear headphones are great for blocking out droning jet sound, but you might not want to lug those big things around on the Camino. Again, consider noise blocking earbuds like the latest AirPods. Pricey but lightweight and effective. At 2 months out, your kit should be complete. At this point, you should have everything that you need for the Camino, ready to go. Take the time to lay everything out on that spare bed or a table or on the floor and give it some serious consideration. Is this too much stuff? Is this not enough stuff? Load up your pack and weigh it. Seriously, weigh yourself without the pack, and then with the pack. Subtraction will tell you exactly what your pack weighs. Do you have a small lightweight bag for your underseat storage? A lightweight day pack might be what you need and might give you a little flexibility for taking things with you when you walk around in the evening in town. Or a lot of people like to use a fanny pack. That works too. Again, step up your daily average for walking mileage. You want to increase your walking time so that you are ready to walk that Camino when you get there. Shoes. Like I said, if you haven't done this yet, buy 2 pair of shoes, the same type. The type of shoes that you're planning on walking on the Camino. Both of these, by the way, should be 1/2 size larger than what you typically wear. And I'll give you an example. I usually wear 9.5s. I've worn 9.5s for years. When I started training seriously for the Camino, my feet started to ache. I was doing 8 to 10 miles a day in August in hotter weather. And I started to get feet aching like I had never had before. Went up 1/2 size. That took care of all the problems. Some people may never have that problem, but you see this recommendation a lot, and I'm going to go with that. I think it's a good idea. My recommendation is that both pairs that you buy be 1/2 size larger than what you normally wear. If you want to approach this from a little more frugal standpoint, buy 1 pair 1/2 size larger and just wear them and wear them and wear them. And then a couple weeks before you leave, I'm going to tell you you need to buy another pair that isn't worn so much so you get the full 500 miles of the Camino out of them. So put on that pair that's 1/2 size larger and start pounding out the miles. Do your daily training. All right, now we're down to 1 month before we leave for the Camino. Time to start testing your systems. What do I mean by that? Well, you have a hydration system. You have some way that you're going to be drinking water. Maybe you're going to be carrying water bottles with you. Maybe you have a Camelback kind of pack, a hydration system, or bladder, as they might call it. A shoulder strap with clips. You've seen that perhaps on some of the Camino videos. Time to check that out and see if that's what you really want. For a long time, I was using a bladder as I would wear my backpack and go out hiking. And one day I was with my son, and I said to him, you know, I'm not totally comfortable with this. And he said, well, Dad, it seems like everybody I talk to who uses a bladder just is never totally comfortable with it. That made me rethink what I was doing, and then I went to water bottles hanging on the straps. And eventually I just went with water bottles stuck in the pockets in back of the pack. And I found out that in spite of my complaints and my inflexibility as an older person, that I really could reach them and I really could get them back into the pockets. And I didn't like having that bladder, and I didn't like having the bottles on the straps. For me, that just didn't work. So test your systems. Make sure you're comfortable with things before you hit that Camino. Walk with your pack loaded. Make sure that it's the right pack for you. To be honest with you, recently I went through 3 packs myself. I had a Manta 34 from Osprey, and it was just too low and too wide. And when I put water bottles in the pockets and went to swing my arms to walk, I'm kind of a smaller person, my arms would hit the bottles, and I found that to be uncomfortable. And so I started looking for new packs. My wife has an Osprey Kite 36. They used to be the 36, now the 38, even though they appear to be identical. And I tried that out. It's supposed to be a ladies pack, but it seemed just fine. So, not being totally comfortable with it being a ladies pack, I ordered an Osprey Kestrel 38. And when it got here, I compared the two, and I just couldn't see any differences between them. The strap systems, that you would think the harness would be different, but it just seemed to be exactly the same. I tried it out. It was about the same in comfort, but there were a couple of things I didn't like about that pack. And so I sent the Kestrel back, and I wound up with an Exos 38, and I really like it. And so that's what I'm using now. Let's see, what else might we want to test? Oh, our electronics and how we're going to charge things. Make sure we're familiar with our systems. If we're going to be taking any pictures, if you're going to be doing any videos, just make sure you know how to use your systems and that you're comfortable with them, so that when you get to those first few nights on the Camino, you're not fumbling around. Everything is pretty well set. You know what goes in what bag. You know what goes in which pocket on the pack, and you're just comfortable with all that. If you haven't tried trekking poles before, I would encourage you to try them. Even younger people tell me that they help them with stability when they're at the end of a long day. And for me, I've used trekking poles now for the past 12 years. I have 2 pair that I use here at home in parks that I go to. Sometimes I get the, hey, are you walking or skiing? Haha. But that's all okay. I like using them. They do help me with my knees and my back quite a bit, and they help me to do the miles. Very helpful at the end of a long day when you're hiking with a pack, making a descent into that town that you're going to be staying in. You're tired, you're worn out, and that's when you're most likely to trip or stumble. That's when you need them. So I encourage you to use them. Also at 1 month, we need to decide for sure which clothes we're going to be taking with us. And maybe you've been collecting some things. Personally, when I travel in the summertime, I always wear synthetic fiber clothing, moisture wicking socks, underwear, pants, shirts, and I find it to be very comfortable, rather than wearing cotton that's going to get bogged down with sweat. I've done that for years on many trips that we've taken overseas and in the United States. I find that it helps with odor control, and it certainly helps with sweat control, so that's a must for me. And I recommend that to you too. If you're wondering what the weather is going to be like where you're going, so you can better pick out the clothes, there's a website that is called Weather Underground. Type in the town that you're interested in, click on the tab that says History, and then enter the date that you want to research. And for example, I'm going to be in Pamplona on September 25th of the year. What was the weather like in 2020? I can look it up, and I find out that in 2020, at 7 in the morning, when I might be starting to walk, it was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In 2022, it was similar temperature, but it was rainy. In 2018, temperatures were similar, but it was fair. So now I'm starting to see a trend that for that part of late September, temperatures are considerably lower. They're dipping down into the 50s, maybe the 60s. I did a little more research, and I found that a couple days that I expect to be hiking, historically a couple days during that period of time, temperatures might go up into the 80s, but generally 50s and 60s are where it's at in September and October. So that's a great way to be able to do it instead of just relying on social media and saying, hey, what's the weather like that time of year? And people say, oh, well, it's nice and warm, and it might not be. So do a little bit of research yourself. Again, that's Weather Underground. Very easy to use, and it gives you a lot of good historical weather information. Also, I don't just look at 7 o'clock in the morning. I also look at 10 a.m. I look at noon. I look at 2 p.m. and I complete a spreadsheet with that information so I can just look at it quickly and see the trends, what happens through the day. Now we are at T-minus 2 weeks. You should have everything you need for the trip. You should have tested your systems and made whatever changes were necessary. You should load and unload your pack a few times. Does it make sense? Are things in logical order? Is your rain gear where it can be easily accessed? Is your clothing and bedding going to stay dry? Now, there are a number of ways that you can keep things dry. One thing that is popular among minimalist hikers right now is to take a large white bag, usually a trash compactor bag, and put that into your backpack, and then all of your clothes load into that. I have my things packed and organized into dry bags, and so that's probably what I'm going to continue to use. I'm undecided on pack covers. A lot of people use them, but now the more minimalist approach is to not use a pack cover. If the pack gets wet, it's going to dry. More concerned about the stuff inside staying dry. 1 week left to go, and what should you do now? Everything should be ready. Your clothes, your shoes, plane tickets, train tickets, everything is pretty well established. And now it's training, training, training. Get out there and walk in your shoes with your equipment, with your backpack on. Go out there and trudge a few miles. The neighbors might think you're crazy, but hey, they're not going on the Camino. You are. Enjoy that advantage. Just get out there and train. All right. 1 day to go before we get on the plane. Load that pack for the final time. Most flights on major airlines open for check-in 24 hours before departure, and so you want to log in and check into your flight, and that'll prevent hassle when you get to the airport. Throw some snacks into your small underseat bag so you have something to munch on. Don't rely on the airplane food. If you do take some snacks with you, you can avoid having to stand in line and pay high prices at the airport. Also, set aside those last-minute needs, the things that you can't pack until you're just ready to walk out the door, or at least that morning. Toiletries, your prescription drugs, your toothbrush. Those kinds of things are the things you want to pack last, have ready to go. So set them aside because this is 1 day to go. You have 1 more day before you go to the airport. T-minus 0 days. Make sure your prescription drugs and toiletries get into your go bag. Get to the airport on time. Most sources recommend arriving at the airport 3 hours early for international flights. That seems really early, but it's a good rule of thumb. For domestic flights, 2 hours early. Just make sure you get there on time to get through TSA with plenty of time to spare before you board. And remember, you don't board the plane at departure time. You want to be there an hour ahead of time. They're ready to get on that plane. Hi, my friends. I hope this video has been some encouragement to you as you plan for your next Camino. Please put your thoughts in the comments below. Anything I might have missed? Just go ahead and put it right there. Buen Camino.